Welcome to Tao Living, the Art of Living podcast with your host, Luke Corletto, where you will be supported to remember that you are the driver and not the vehicle, so that you can walk your life in trust. Dr. Gary Salyer is a transformational relationship mentor. For the last decade, Dr. Salyer has been in private practice offering singles and couples heart-centered transformation so they can rewrite the rules for love in their brains and create a love that lasts. Dr. Gary speaks to a national audience as a featured expert on various celebrity TV and radio shows such as Hay House Radio and Coast to Coast AM. He is the author of the groundbreaking book, Saved to Love Again: How to Release the Pain of the Past Relationships and Create the Love You Deserve. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my guest for this episode, Dr. Gary Salyer. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you've heard in the introduction, I am really excited to have my guest speaker on the call with us today, on this show today. He is the author of Safe to Love Again. And I happened to meet Dr. Gary, what was that, a month and a half ago, Gary, when we were in LA?
Yeah, it was 1st of November.
Something like that. And we happened to be at a mutual event from one of our friends and mentors as well, who's a master in messaging, who's actually has been a guest on this show, Jeffrey. Shout out to Jeffrey Van Dyke. And so the first thing I noticed was this guy is brilliant. His intellect just comes ripping through in his communication. Like, okay, I got some stuff to learn about this guy. Then I find out that he is, his specialty is working in relationship and how to heal relationship. So we started talking, and he gifted me with this book. And when I read the title, I was like, something's not matching there for me, because it only sounds like personal relationship, like how to heal the past, how to heal the pain of the past relationships and create the love you deserve. That is totally covered in the book, no doubt. And as I was just sharing with Gary beforehand, it is so much more than that. And what I mean by that, so listening audience, as you've heard me talk about before, which is part of being in the earth plane, is we're in relationship to everything, right? We sit in a chair, we're in relationship with the chair, right? When you eat the sandwich, you're in relationship with the sandwich. And it obviously gets more intimate when we now are in relationship with other living entities, be it animals, plants, and especially sentient beings. There's a whole different dynamic that's occurring. And what one of the things I really appreciate, the depth and breadth that's in the book. Gary is covering, yes, relationship, yes, psychology, but he's diving into neurology, neuroanatomy, in an understandable way. This isn't too techno. And consciousness, right? As I was sharing with him before we went live, one of the most beautiful pieces of when he, a simple statement, but super profound, is, look, we all have experiences, like, period, of course. Yet, few people realize they're the ones that are creating them, right? Oh, now, if we peel that back strictly into all of our life dynamics and our relationships, right? Now it's time to take ownership of how we've been showing up. And which I did in the early part of my life before I became conscious. When I was a victim, I was always seeing outside, and everything that happened was other people, right? So when I had an encounter that wasn't pleasant, I got to blame the other person. It wasn't my fault that that interaction didn't go well, right? And nonsense, yeah. So, so that was a preamble to the audience there, Gary. What I would, you set the stage with three pieces, right? Or at least the way I perceived it in the book, which is creating the we-ness, then the power of the four feelings, and then the six rights. Mm-hmm. We might be jumping off the board quick, I'm not sure, but if not, would you be at peace with explaining what those three keys are and why they're key?
Okay, sure. You talk about how we create experience. The most interesting question, the best question you'll ever ask yourself is not, why is this happening to me? Why did this? Why is the dog chasing its tail? If you've ever had a conversation with a 4-year-old, those whys go forever. Why that? Why this? And it will go forever. How is my brain creating this? Now, there's your winning ticket.
Mm.
Now, somebody say, well, I'm not creating this. And no, the part of you that says, hi, I'm Lou, or I'm Gary, or I'm whoever your name is out there, surely not. No part says, gosh, I wonder how I can go bankrupt. I wonder how I can bankrupt my relationship and then have to file divorce, right? No part comes in and says that. But some other part is that learned how to create experience in such a way to protect you from earlier pain. And what is that pain? The pain that I talk about, the primeval pain, is usually given 0 to 3, and it's 4 feelings. When babies are born, they're born to neurologically expect experiences and feelings. Feelings run the show. Now, if you're all left brain, or you've been given a whole a set of lesterons and testosterone in the male sex role, you'll be thinking, oh no, it's logic. No, it's actually feelings, because we can tell a baby's love style and how it will track for the rest of their life by the time they're 1. How much logic is online at 1? Not a lot, but a lot of feelings. The feelings we're supposed to be given. And this is the heart and soul of the book. Babies that feel loved, babies that feel empowered to go out into the world and actually have the life they want. Love and life are programmed by the same feelings. Love and life are programmed by the same rights. Those feelings welcomed with joy. A baby expects to have, oh, there's little Lou, so glad you're here. Or worthy. So it's okay to reach out and have your needs. There's no baby that's born that says, I'm not sure I'm allowed to breastfeed today. They don't do that. They reach out and they do what they do, right? They feel cherished and protected. They have a right to feel cherished and protected and empowered with choice. All babies that feel loved, and all people that feel loved, are good at receiving and giving these 4 key feelings that come online between 0 and 3. Now, each of these feelings are a permission slip. They each give rights. Is it okay for me to go into that, Lou?
Please.
Yeah. Feelings, if you think about it, are permission slips. Emote. Motivation is a part of the word emotion. They are permission slips. If you feel welcomed with joy, if you've been given that feeling, it's okay to be here on the earth, and it's okay to be here in your body. Now, if you were given unwelcomed, then the baby flees into their brain and flees from their body. They're not welcomed here. So the best way to turn down all that pain of rejection is to live in their head. Not that I would have done that, mind you. Okay. And then the second feeling is called worthy. If you're given that worthiness, it's okay to reach out and have your needs, to ask for your needs and expect an attuned response back. So babies that feel worthy reach out and they expect to receive. But what if we were given unworthy or not enough or not deserving? Then we pull back from reaching out. Or, what most people don't, we don't receive. Not reaching out or not receiving are part A and B of the same missing right. Okay, so there, and it frequently comes in line in as sort of, well, there's a shortage out there of good men and women. That whole frequency that there's not enough out there for me. There's no abundance. That's part of that. Now, the third right comes on when a toddler is able to separate and they realize they're me. But all toddlers know they need protection. So they are looking for a me and a we. You know how when a toddler wants to play by their toys by themselves, but they don't want you leaving the room either. You go for a cup of coffee for 10 seconds and they're crying. Where did you go? We all have a need to be a me, like our culture says, but in a we, in a cherishing, protecting. What I say is we all have this, we want to be exploring our highest potential on the high wire act of our life, but wouldn't you rather have a safety net? That's the we. And then the fourth feeling. So if you don't, have that, if you don't feel cherished and protected, maybe not honored or appreciated or included or seen, these feelings, then you opt usually to go on life on your own.
Mm.
I'll do it by myself. I'll pull myself up by my bootstraps. And sometimes that's necessary if you're in a wrong set of circumstances. But when you get into later life and you try to build a business, you try to do a relationship without we and without support, good luck. And then the last feeling and the rights that come from it is empowered. If a baby is given that feeling of power, they are given a right to create their own experience, not have somebody else be the standard of their experience. So mommy and daddy don't get to tell them how to play with the toys, unless there's something dangerous about it. There's always that parental aspect. But if they want to play with their toys, or the little girl wants to play with the truck and not the doll, oh, that's good. A right to create their experience. And they're good with all of them, the good and the bad, the strong and the weak. And they're also given a right to assert. And assert is to have a voice and choice, where they get to have their wins in life. They get to be able to pursue what they really want. And when you add all that together, at about age 3, you get a right to love and be loved.
Mm.
Now, all of that, if you notice, the we is right in the middle of there. We are given individual rights. Our culture has Maslow's theory of your needs, right? What's at the top?
Self-actualization.
But every right that Maslow would, I think, agree upon, that I'm talking about, they were not given to go solo. They were given to create attachment. So a we is implicit. At the very top is a right to self-actualize in a we.
Mm.
And that's where our culture is not so good. And if it's anything I've had to learn in relationships and business, is we need a we. Right here is a we, Lou. You and I are helping each other. We're supporting each other. And we are supporting other people. If you're listening to this, you're benefiting from the we that Lou and I developed at a couple of breaks in that meeting. And I thought, oh, what a cool dude. Right?
Gary, thank you for creating that profound summary. And ladies and gentlemen, when you're reading the book, which I'll have a link, Gary's got a gift for us at the end, a beautiful guide that you can get access to from his site, and definitely a link to get the book. I cannot overemphasize how strongly I suggest you get this. It transcends strictly the intimate relationship. The teachings in the book are relationship for life. It's a life book. And so the summary he just covered, the feelings and then the rights. And he also gives these beautiful stories from clients and done so anonymously to unpack and paint the picture of how the rights, when they're healthy and when they're missing, right? To really help us, the reader, go through like, oh, what does that look like? So I found myself so many times in the stories on both sides, way too often going, oh my goodness. And I was sharing with Gary before we went live, which was, I have to amend my list of reaching out for making amends, because some of the missing rights that I had before I healed many of them, how I showed up or didn't show up in relationships. Right. Yeah. So there's a lot of self-reflection that you get to experience. And then the gift of taking self-ownership to follow the guidance in the book to then upgrade. And so you can show up differently. And especially the last one, what he calls the summary, right? To love and be loved. Like, to do that at full capacity is why we're here.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, that's the juice. And in the beginning, it's one of the beautiful quotes, Marianne Williamson, right, that he starts the book off with, which is that we're not held back by the love that we didn't receive in the past, but by the love that we're not extending in the present. And Gary, obviously, correct me on this. My interpretation of Marianne on that, and the reason you're using it, is because of the pain that we have experienced, we're holding back because we don't want to experience more of the same.
Exactly.
Right. And the gift that you're giving us is going, hey, yes, true, been there, had it, resolve that, and apply new tools and strategies, rewire the system so you can show up fully without worrying about being slapped again, right?
Exactly. I mean, if you think about it, and way back then, there is a wounded child. Those are the ones that didn't get the good feelings. They got unwelcomed or unworthy or not so cherished, not protected, or not so empowered, right? But there, a little on later, comes your adaptive child or your reactive child that comes on and tries to protect you, but they're protecting you the way a 4 or 5-year-old. Let me give you an example from my own life. Okay. And Marianne is talking about that. When I was 17, my mother, who was mentally on borderline, said, "You're not invited to Thanksgiving." Right. So, and as it turned out, the good people at the church, I had 3 people invite me to Thanksgiving dinner, and I had 3 Thanksgiving dinners that day. And at 17, you can do that. And they just so happened to be the 3 best looking girls in the youth group, right? And my best friend said, providing a good wheeze, said, "I want to be there to support you today. Let me come along with you." To this day, I wonder about his true altruistic motivation. And so now, come Christmas, this is where the adaptive child comes in. I took off by 6 o'clock in the evening on Christmas Eve. She was not going to get a second chance at this, right? Now that adaptive child becomes a pattern of doing a preemptive strike of withdrawal. And what is that now for somebody else that's in a healthy, in a relationship with me? This becomes, it feels like abandonment. It feels like I'm a low-level version of the same energy I got. And that is not cool. That's the love I began to give to protect myself from the love I didn't get. And when we do that, that's what Marianne's talking about.
Right. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you're hearing that, and again, Gary, correct me on that. My interaction with that, and which is the protective self says, "I'm out of here." The preemptive strike, right, to avoid what might be coming. Yet that same pattern played out in other realms. That's your safety. What you're not realizing you're putting on other people is bailing on them, right? Hence the abandonment. So you're now creating patterns in other people, not realizing it because you're in a protective pattern, right?
We often give forth the energy I wasn't so cherished and protected, and without me knowing it, I was giving it. That's real enlightenment when it comes to relationships. That is when too many people on memes today are pointing out, I had an abusive mother, dad, ex. And what I'm not hearing so much is, how am I not showing up as love before that? Now, I want you to notice something. All these missing rights, all these adaptive parts of us that are meant to protect, and protection is not connection. This part of your brain, your adaptive child, isn't interested at all in love and connection. It's interested in protecting. Notice that at the time, that's pretty much the best deal available, but not later. Adaptive then, maladaptive now. The real art and science is to heal those feelings, because it's hard to give cherished or worthy when you don't carry them. Hard to give what you don't have. And then, you have to, I had to later on deal with that 17-year-old day. Look, now I know that you ran track and you were pretty good at getting out of Dodge. And that made sense when you were dodging the bullets, the emotional bullets of a borderline mother. But that's not so cool when you abandon the people who love you, especially, it just because your partner says we need to talk doesn't mean you have to think what's coming was 19, whatever it was, right? It's time to stay. And I am older and wiser, and I have the feelings I can give you and her. This is, and notice we have to have the feelings. We have to have compassion. I don't judge that 17-year-old. And if you're out there listening, there's lots of patterns. Maybe you run. Maybe you try to enmesh. Maybe you just overgive and give and give. Each of these feelings has certain predictable patterns. Unworthy people who feel unworthy are not enough freely. Give until they're the king and queen of resentment. And to lose themselves or relationships or find someone who will dominate them, right? People who don't feel cherished and protected, sometimes they enmesh. I just got to keep this connection. But my experience is more people go to, and I'll do it by myself. I'm not going to be cherished. I'm not going to be protected. And one of the things I have learned is when people don't feel they can be protected by love, they'll opt for power instead. Most people who go on one up are trying to run power trips, coerciveness, manipulation, control, dominance. I guarantee you they never felt protected by love. So they said, if I can't have love protect me, I'll have power. These don't help anyone. Now, at one time, it was the best deal available. Our job is to give your brain, it's safe to feel worthy. It's safe to feel empowered again. And then to give it a better deal. This is doable change. I wrote the book so people knew, one, stop judging themselves, but also know there's doable change. And so they do the work, and we don't have more love in life. And these do affect relationships. So to your point, show me somebody. I've had, I don't know how many hundred women who had businesses come to me. All of them, without exception, got a better business. If they showed up and they didn't feel very worthy, they were giving and giving and giving, freebie, 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 or never charging their worth and feeling resentful. If they didn't feel cherished and protected, they didn't have a right to be in a we. They either didn't seek coaching or they had lousy staffs who just would flake and not, you guessed it, cherish and protect and support them. If they didn't feel empowered, it's hard to create marketing that is powerful when you don't feel empowered. It's if you can't create your own experience, how can you create another one? Or you don't have a right to assert, and good luck being on stage. And if you don't have a right to love and be loved, there's a part of you that just can't really handle a raving fan club. And then you wonder why things don't work. All of these rights grow legs and become a pattern for life. Because remember, in an early child, your world is your relationship with your parents. And all of these rights become templates for relationships, and they become templates and cookie cutters for how we create life. And so there's no difference. I mean, I've literally had business owners who came to me and said, I just want to work on business. And you guessed it. You know what we found? We found stuff in their relationship, because it's the same thing. I've had people show up for relationships. I'm not here. I've got a 7-figure business. Don't need it. Lo and behold, their staff relationships weren't that great. There's a correlation.
Yeah, 100%. And earlier, when you were sharing some of the examples, the reason I boisterously laughed, because that was for decades, the deep pattern was to outgive the giver, right? Because receiving wasn't an option. So I spent my life outgiving the giver to the point where finally was resentful, because it was like, wow. And not until a dear friend of me said, you know how good it feels to give? I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, do you realize by not receiving, you're stopping people from feeling that? That began my healing process, because I didn't realize that I was cutting people off from having that experience of the joy of giving, because I wouldn't receive because of the wounded patterns, right? The unhealthy rights.
Yeah, and we all have a little tracker. It's human to know that we're giving equally, right? And it's a little rude to not receive, because it makes them feel guilty. And it's a rejection. I still remember the psychologist, and they were both psychologists. And he said to me, what do you do when your wife thinks she has no needs? And you could tell that he could never truly love her. And he was getting very, very frustrated with that. Yeah. It turned out she had a mother with some real horrible rejecting energy of her, and who would want to receive that. So remember, it's not just reaching out, it's receiving as well. And sometimes I've even had people who had such a missing right to have their needs met that it wasn't just in relationships and business. They even had anemia. I knew one woman that had, from the time of 9, she had anemia. when we worked on the right to have her needs met, she had told me earlier, doctors have given me high-powered vitamins and injections and shots, and nothing has ever worked. When she finally began to receive in her relationships, 2 months later, she walks in, she goes, something weird's going on.
My
Her
blood profile is
body,
normal.
yes, you understand, you read energy her body had mimicked the missing writer in the brain and was not receiving.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, this point, which the people have been following and connecting with this podcast and my work for a long time, that's the essence of my work is helping people remember, right? That you're the driver, you're not the vehicle, and as the driver, you are running. You are the operating system. Therefore, in this example, so anemia, for people who don't know, it was a blood issue, and now it's expressing literally physiologically in their body. Now, that looks like a medical problem, which is how our world teaches us. We're broken and malfunctioning. But if we're going to go conscious, then nothing happens by accident in an organized universe. Therefore, the body showing up where it's not developing the blood profile as a healthy, how does that connect to the patterns that I'm running, to the thoughts that I carry, to the neurology that I'm expressing? Oh my goodness, I don't allow myself to receive. Wow! And that being healed, the blood profile changes, right? So this is why I'm imploring people to get this, because wow, how this will incorporate body, mind, soul healing, starting with self first, and then growing into the we in dynamic of relationship, and then the gift of also having compassion to understand what others might be going through when you can see some of their patterns of, ooh, they might be missing this, right? That's why they show up like this. Right? It helps us, at least for me, as I read, I'm like, ooh, I can even deepen my compassion, where sometimes I might want to poke somebody in the eye. I can take a breath and go, oh, I get it.
Yeah, I wrote the book, and it's a guide for life. You'll never see the people around you the same. I've even had parents tell me who, wow, now I know how to raise children a lot better, our child. And in fact, so much so that I had a couple, they were in pretty good shape coming in. They just had two little boys, and it had taken a ding off their relationship. And it was so cute. This is one of my favorite stories. They said, how do we teach our 3 and 5-year-old boys? So I had sippy cups. I had I had coffee cups, and they became sippy cups that I had from an event. And I gave it to them, and they had welcome, worthy, cherished, and empowered. And I said, so at supper time, discuss for 1 week of the month what it means to welcome. Then the next week, worthy, the next week, cherished, and the next week, empowered. Rinse and repeat. Where after about 5 months, these boys had these 4 feelings down. So much so, Lou, that she walked into the room when the 2 boys were playing and found that the 3-year-old had just whacked the 5-year-old on top of the head with a truck. And the 5-year-old turns to the 3-year-old and says, I don't feel very cherished and protected. Now, it's simple. You give and receive. And these feelings go into your body. What you were talking about. We have something called a vagus nerve. Vagus nerve is a nerve that comes out of your 10th cranial, back here in your neck, but it connects your attachment with every organ in your body. Think about, it's just part of your social engagement. It is tied to your ears, your mouth, your eyes, the facial muscles. It's tracking your attachment, and it regulates nearly every organ in your body. So what we talked about is this is embodied energy. This isn't just we are not enskulled, we are embodied. So when I talk about Gwen in the book, who had that missing right to have her needs met, that dysregulation, that feeling is being beamed down to your body. And another one, I had another client who had gastroparesis, means her stomach really wasn't moving in the ways it needed to. And it was really interesting how she had said in her relationships, I simply can't make a move. And then when she was describing a medical appointment, and she described this, and she goes, "It's like my stomach can't make a move." I'm going, "Oh, there's your energy. The energy is coming down." So it's a roadmap to what's going on with health. It's a roadmap to the health of your relationships, life. These rights that I talk about, these 4 feelings are the key. And I don't mean to be simplistic. There's a lot of variations, right? But you got to realize, what tells a 1-year-old they're loved can't be all that complex. And this is the bottom line: 4 key feelings. And so if you're a guy out there and you're listening, start tracking these feelings. Not, well, did I do this or do I do that? And, I did what Gary Chapman said with the love languages. No, did she still feel worthy? Oh, was it the tone of voice when you gave it to her? Oh, now we're talking attachment. Did you make, all this? It's a roadmap for life. It's the energy of life and love.
So yes. And oh my goodness, there's just so much I want to keep unpacking with you. I'm going to take a little deviation here for a moment because I'm watching this, as I'm guessing you are as well, especially in the last couple of years around the world, right? With what the paradigm that was laid upon humanity, and the after effects of that.
Oh yeah.
So there's this beautiful piece where the simplicity of the description of depression, that it's the inability to construct a future, right? So I'm bringing that up because what I'm witnessing is there's a lot of people that are like, oh, what do I do now? Like, for whatever reasons, the impact of lockdowns, the amount of war, there's this paralysis that's kicked in that I'm watching and witnessing.
Yes.
And hence this experience where massive depression has increased. But I love the piece that you finish it up with, which is when we don't feel trapped anymore, then depression lifts, right? So can you speak to that? Because I know that's profoundly out there in the field.
Yeah. COVID did a number on us. 2 hours after my son called me, after Gavin Newsom put a lockdown on everybody, he says, "How's it feel to be grounded, Dad?" With some glee, I might say, in his heart.
Paybacks, huh?
Yeah, there was a little bit of the 7-year-old Kenny in there. Oh, that's where he's at. But within 2 hours, I said, this is going to do 2 things. It's going to really mess with our right to separate and belong. If you're a couple, you're going to get no right to separate. It's going to superheat your relationship. And what happened was couples they were face to face with what they'd been using separation to hide themselves from. Or if you're single, you're going to get no right to connect. You're not going to get any right to belong. And when you get all those restrictions, you're not going to feel very empowered. These 2 feelings were going to be out the door, and that was pretty much the case. Now, one of the things that, I drew on the research of Rollo May, who was a real big depression guy. And he said he never dealt with anybody depressed that didn't have an inability to create their future. This is where the right to create your own experience. Now, you have to feel empowered. You get to be the standard. That also means you've got options. You're not totally dependent. Now, were there some options taken away from us? Yes. But on the other side of this, we've got to reclaim our right to create our own experience. I mean, sometimes I look at some of the geopolitical unrest that's going on in this world, particularly anywhere there's a threat of authoritarianism, right? Or an authoritarian is both governmental, and there can be the corporate version that are running our lives, right? All that creates, somebody else gets to be the template of your experience. And the real thing is, what does it mean to be at choice? And this means really understanding how your brain creates experience. It's not just happening to me. How did my brain, because I talk in the book about a guy that came to me some years ago, Paul.
Actually, I had that right on here. I'm like, can we talk about Paul? Because this is a classic. Thank you for bringing this up. This is beautiful.
Okay. It was spelled out to me so poignantly. Working a few months with him, he was twice divorced, and he said, I don't get it. Mom and dad are very secure, married 50 some years. My older brother and sister married 20 and 25 years, respectively. Everybody's secure. Everybody is got successful marriage except for me. I'm the problem child, right? And I've been through 2 divorces, and my whole life I've been waiting for, when does love turn against me? And I ran 2 wives away. I just didn't trust them, and both of them in about 10 years said, fine, if you can't trust me, I'll find somebody that will. And I said, see, I told you you'd turn against me. Now we track the words, when does love turn against me, to he was at a campfire when he was 4. And for no good reason, his father, who has never done anything like that before, afterwards, grabbed him and just started beating on him for no good reason, scared him. And from that point on, his brain was focused on, when does love turn against me? And he opted for an anxious style. Well, he came to one of my events, live event, and he came in tow with his older brother who has been married 25 years. And they were sitting over there on the left, right on the front row together. He and his brother said, I'm going to be here to support him. Somewhere in the middle of that first morning, I asked for some shares, and he began to share about this event that happened at 4. And what I was watching his brother's jaw drop to the floor. I mean, I'm going, wow, now that is an interesting reaction over there. And he finally interrupts. He says, so that this incident, that's why you're so screwed up. Of course, he used another word. He says, Paul, you have it all wrong. He says, I was there. I was 9. You were 4. You got too close to the campfire. Your pant legs caught on fire, and Dad had to beat out the flames. He wasn't turning against you. He's keeping you from becoming a marshmallow. And they looked at each other. His brain created an experience. Little 4-year-olds' brains don't tend to be all that present. It can delete a lot, and then it only snatched on that, deleted the fire scene, right? And made up a whole world versus a whole universe. It wasn't what happened. And it was the way his brain filtered, deleted experience, and then a story. Now, not every story is quite like that. This is not meant to discount, but is meant to point out that experience is what's between our head. Life is what's outside. And this is adjustable. And there's a lot of deletion and all sorts of things. And back then, people take the best shot. I mean, the part of me that said, I don't want to receive from my mother, best deal available. The part of me that said, don't want to be a part of a we because I might because she was violent and I hit the wall too many times. Distance is good. And so at 4, I made a decision to play with my toys by myself. Beautiful decision if you have a violent borderline mother. But when 20 years later, I'm married and I'm up in my room working by myself, and she goes, Gary, I feel lonely. And I go, how do you mean you're lonely? We're in the same house together. Distance. My brain learned that distance equals the best deal. And it wasn't. And then the funny thing was, I did 7 years of therapy, and I no longer sought distance, but the feeling of distance was still in the bottom of my brain. We didn't change the feelings. We worked with strategies. Guess what I did in my second marriage? You guessed it. I outsourced it. I found someone who will provide all the distance for me. And it wasn't until I realized that distance equals safe, not connection, that my brain did. And now I understood all the feeling that was organizing all the various coaching. And if if you change limiting beliefs, all limiting beliefs come on three. Beliefs are there to explain. They're there to explain what was already in the hopper, the feeling. You can do a vision board. Great, scare some part of yourself dead. The other part's going, was I ever safe with all that? I don't think so. You've got to change the feelings. If we can work with the feelings and change them, and working with them has been, for me, relationally as a man. I remember I used to be afraid of them. And I used to think women were such a mystery. My God, they signal all the time emotionally. If you're not tuned in, then it's like you've got your radar turned off. It was like getting, all of a sudden, when I did this work, I remember one day thinking, women aren't a mystery. They are telegraphing all the time. And it was like a blind man getting his sight back. Mm. So this is the key.
Yeah.
The energy is feelings. Mm. And are you giving it? I've even had a business owner say, after I read your book, he made more than $5 million a year. Says, now I know why my staff meetings are not productive. I don't give the feeling of empowered with choice very well.
Whee! There's so much. One of the pieces when I was reading the book, Gary, and the work that that I have been doing with helping people clear out the stories, right, that are stuck in the neurology, that are stuck in the embodiment of the system. And when we talk about neurologically and the neurons and mirror neurons for empathy, and when we experience the patterns early on where it's not, as you've already described, right, where it's not safe, then I leave the body and go up in my head, or I just disembody altogether and live outside of my body.
Yes.
And how many people that I've worked with was first and foremost, we've got to get you back in here and to let it be safe to come back home.
Yes.
Because until we come back home in this body, that it is safe, then I can connect, because there's no way I can connect if I'm not here.
Exactly. No. Most times when people are connecting from neck down, disconnecting, most times they have a missing right to exist, and they never felt welcomed, so they flee to their head to get rid of all that rejection. Because when a baby is first born, this comes on right after birth. There's no distinction between body and feeling, so you got to tone it down as much as possible. You can't really do that until you've given yourself that feeling of welcomed. I can still remember, I had a dream once where I was a pretty good athlete, and I was jogging 722 miles at 50, right? And my body walks up to me and says, if you keep pushing me like this, you could kill me. And it said, and by the way, I'm tired of being treated like a second-class citizen. And the feeling was like someone who had been abused, and simply said, can we be partners? I woke up on that dream. When your body walks up and says, I feel like a servant, can you please be my partner? And that dream really helped show me that I had still more work to do with my right to exist. And attachment is right brain. It's in only your right brain is connected to your body. Guess where Dr. Salyer went over to his left brain? There's been a growth or arc for me of moving more and more into my right brain, not just my feelings, but in my body. And when you can get feelings at an embodied level to be communicated, a lot of couples are doing skills they've learned from coaches, but their bodies are emanating and communicating feelings from childhood, and they wonder why the partner's nervous system is reacting differently. Sorry about the cough.
Yeah, well, right. That's the old Emerson quote is, who you are speaks so loud, I can't hear what you're saying. Right. So I might be saying one thing verbally, but my system is actually speaking a different language.
Exactly. When I've dealt with couples, you can see them, I can give them skill sets sometimes. And I usually start with rights and feelings before I give skill sets. but that old feeling comes through. And we are reading the whole person, not just the words. Attachment is deeply embodied, and it takes a little work. But, when you do this, your whole life opens up.
Mm.
I can honestly say that, yeah, I didn't get a whole lot of belonging. And I used from my mother, who, didn't even name me for 3 weeks because she didn't really want me. And that rejection had its various places, like the story I told you, right? So the story becomes ways I'll never belong, ways I've never belonged. But these days, because I feel cherishable, and I know I live in a cosmic we, there's always connection available. And I get a chance to choose. I get to belong, have a place of belonging, and lose the heart. All the people like we're in the event, all the people who are listening here, people who reach out, I have far more belonging, and I've always appreciated what Wayne Dyer said, is that friends are God's way of apologizing for family. So too often a missing right to create your experience says, I can only get belonging in this small little group over here, or whoever it was. No, when you get a right to create your own experience and feel empowered, you can create your choice with belonging. You have a right to belong, but not to any one human being. You could have a mother and dad that will never learn their lessons in life. Good luck trying to get it. But the right is not tied to suddenly I'll have cookies and sugar cream with my parents. If they're not doing the work, no, you will not. But you can belong. You have a right to belong and be in a we with someone who's really got their stuff together and sees the beautiful soul that you are, sees all the potential, and they want to be there to love and support. That's what a right is. It's not tied to an individual. It's not tied to a situation. You may have to change situations. Now, this is where all of the rights come together, all of the feelings. You can feel worthy, but if you don't have empowered working with it, then you won't look at all the options to get the feeling of worthy. And if you have all the options, but you don't have worthy, then you'll explore options that are dead ends. You've got to have all of them together.
So, ladies and gentlemen listening, wherever you're at on the spectrum of life, of listening, which is like, hey, I'd like to improve my business structure. Like, well, then doing this work is going to help you. You're single, thinking, well, I've tried it over and over again. It doesn't work. I guess I'm just meant to be single all my life. Not true. If you've already done the dance, no matter where you're at in the spectrum, going through this work, right? Get Gary's book, go through the work. Get the guide that he's going to give us here in a moment, and I'll have the link in the show notes to further drill into the tools and the capacity to understand the feelings and the rights and identify where they are intact and where they might be missing.
Yeah.
And then, that's the clarity, like, okay, where do I start? Well, he guides you through that process. Because what's waiting for us, right? That's the thing, is we've bumped into it. I mean, depending on where you're at in your dance, I'll speak for myself. When I was early on bumping into the stuff that I'm like, well, this is just the way I am. No, it was the way I was wired because of the experiences I encountered and didn't have the proper tools to process because I was too young.
Exactly.
And therefore it was like, well, deal with it, right? And so
that child was a hero child too. That child made a beautiful move. It was a hero child, not to be judged. It did the greatest deal, Bill. Just no child should protect you at 4 and 5 when you're 40 and 50.
100%, right? And this piece, like, so it's all healing to me, but for just vernacular, in the world of health and healing, quote unquote, people can't even talk about or address wellness until they get out of crisis.
Yes.
So in relationships, the same thing. You might be wanting this beautiful, yummy experience in a relationship. It could be a friend or an intimate partner or your staff or your extended family. Like, hey, the people that have the same genetic code, I'd like to have a better relationship with. It's all doable. All doable.
Your brain knows it instinctively. Your brain was born deserving. You had to be taught to feel undeserving. You was born to feel empowered. you had to be taught to be disempowered. Some part of you knows and feels that, but it was better to take them and put them away and lay away until the day you got older and wiser and you could reclaim them.
100%.
So it's doable because we were born with the capacity. We're just we're making it safe to give. Thus the title of the book, Safe to Love Again.
Safe to love again, right? So in that metaphor of the healing, that until we handle the crisis, then we can deal with wellness and wholeness. In relationship, when we didn't receive these rights as Gary describes, then we go into protection, right? A form of, hey, how do I survive in this moment to get through this process? Well, then we run that pattern so long, we forget that we chose it in order to, like Gary says, this is the best deal available. And then we run it long enough, we believe that that's who we are, and it's not. That's just how we survived up to this point. And we get to change that and rewrite the script in order to show up fully healthy and to experience a whole nother level of life and love and yumminess that is there for all of us.
You get to write a new story. Now, one of the things I know from working, if you don't change the feelings, the story won't feel authentic in your brain. You can just go and do that stuff all day long. But when you've changed your feelings, a lot of times clients will need to upgrade their story. It doesn't mean you change the facts. I still have a borderline mother, but notice back then I would say I have no right to belong. You can never make a woman happy. There's a whole lot of aspects of that old story at 17. But these days, no. If you've got 4 feelings, you can make a woman happy. And I have a right to belong all over the country, all over the world, right? Now, I tell it from a secure place with different feelings. This is the art. And by the way, the research points out that how you tell your story tells your brain what experience to create in the future, because the function of memory is to predict the future. And it will predict your children's love styles with 85% accuracy. And they've tracked this for 6 generations. So changing the feelings and changing how I talk about my life are important. You have to change both aspects. If you want to change your life, you have to change your story, you have to change your beliefs, but underneath that, you have to change these feelings, because the feelings and the rights are the same thing. Worthy is a right to reach out. Reach out has to have worthy. They're like two sides of the same coin. If you work at that baseline level with someone who knows how to swap out and change it, not just coaching, not just cognitive behavior therapy. No. That's not going to do it. This is all deeply limbic, and it is deeply embodied. You'd be surprised how doable this change is. There's hope. And you were born worthy. You were born worthy of this change. You were born empowered to do this change. There's neuroplasticity. This is doable change.
Yes. So please, if you've heard nothing else, ladies and gentlemen listening, understand that take that last piece in. Because as Gary just described again, which is because of the tapes that we're running, we then keep creating and recreating the experiences, even if we don't want them, because that's what we're focusing on, and that's what is in the hard drive. That's the software we're running, and then we get the reinforcement that, okay, it's not supposed to work. Whatever the reinforcement you happen to be running, right? My reinforcement was those things, whatever it was. I'm not allowed to receive, or I'm unworthy, and then therefore I would attract these events that would reinforce that's true, which would then reinforce it. Now I keep believing it deeper and deeper, and then, oh well, that's how it is. No. That's just how it was, right? And so that's the offering that we're both giving you right now, is no matter what's happening, it can be cleaned up, upgraded, rewired, and to have a completely different life outcome.
Yeah.
Health, love, abundance.
We have the experience that we have the rights for.
Yes.
Show me something worthy, I'll show you somebody that takes takers. Or they don't receive. Show me that feels disempowered, and I'll show you somebody that either loses themselves in relationships or they find takers. If you feel unworthy, you will select the people who will take, and you think the whole world is takers, or you will simply not. You will find a way to shortchange giving people your value or not getting value back. Then you think, well, I can never be a success. All of this. I mean, I've even done this whole thing for a marketing group once, and showed out how every one of these rights worked out in terms of marketing in a business. Every last one of them will affect your business. This, if you can upgrade your attachment, you're talking about the key, the goal. It's life's golden ticket. And it just happens. It starts as love and works out as success, health, the other things. That's why I say in the book, love is the operating system. And you're working at it, Lou, from an embodied place. And, now you've seen a few other feelings. So when you're looking for these energies, you know that, hey, wow, this feels like I'm empowered. It always comes from someplace back there. And then we work with it gently, not because at one time it was the best deal available. No brain gets up in the morning and say, how can I screw with my master? But if it's still protecting you the way it was protecting you 30 or 40 years ago, I would think that probably few of us use a little peck and key typewriter. Most of us, we can upgrade a little better, right?
Yes, sir. So to honor the audience's time and to honor your time, sir, there's one more question left.
Okay.
And then asking you to share what you want to gift the audience with. And that is, what's the most efficient way to process, handle, and heal the experience of betrayal?
So we have to understand what betrayal is. There's a science to this too. The metric for betrayal, what we're talking about is trust, the science of trust. And the opposite of trust is betrayal. And what's that metric? We trust when I know that if we're in a relationship, Lou, that you will not leverage your interest at my expense, that you will not seek a win at my loss, that we are co-creating in a way that both of us get wins, that you are cherishing and protecting my interest the way you were your own. Now, when there's betrayal, someone has leveraged their interest and needs at someone else's expense. If there's an affair, then it's the sexuality piece. It could be financial. It could be health. If somebody is giving the feelings of contempt, we know it turns off T cells for 5 hours in an intimate relationship, and that women who have been subjected to a lot of contempt are 9 times at risk for breast cancer because T cells are being turned off. That's a real subtle form of betrayal. Being mean and contemptuous and one-up is no way to treat a spouse. The key for betrayal is trust. And trust is all about cherishing and protecting. If you truly cherish and protect the essence of that person, you are looking. So when I'm dealing, like, say, a couple that's had infidelity, the path is that person's got to see how much hurt they've caused, that they have betrayed that person, and then they have to build up trust. And the key is always, I will cherish and protect you. Think of any form of trust that cherish and protecting doesn't provide trust, or that the healers. Think about corporate America. Do we trust corporate America to have our backs anymore? No, because they don't cherish and protect the individual worker. No matter what level we're on, there's an epidemic of seeing each other as objects, and objects that can be manipulated for our own good and the most profit or our own interest. There's nothing in that paradigm called radical American individualism that doesn't promote leveraging of one person's interest against the other. It's implicit in the individualism of our culture is betrayal and lack of trust. This is what's going on sociopolitically. Starts as a philosophy that started with the Enlightenment fathers and mothers that started way back then. What we haven't learned, so we've gotten more and more me, less and less we, and the more me, show me, couple without a we, and I'll show you a war. So the point is, you've got to get them to see each other's essence, see the essence of somebody, and to cherish and protect. Now, let me explain what this is. there was an experiment done with little 3 and 4-year-olds who had attachment objects. Like if you can see it up there, there's a little raccoon. That was my son's attachment object. They're little blankets and binkies they fall asleep with, and they're really attached. So they brought them in this experiment, and they had this big fake machine with a lab person in there. And they asked these children, can we replicate this binky or this blanket or this bear? And the children that were attached, but not that attached, said, oh yeah, give me another one of those. Ring me up. But the children that were really attached, super attached, couldn't fall asleep without this bear or this binky or this blanket. And no. There's something so special with Mr. Blanky that you can't replicate him. That child saw an essence in that attachment object that they could not get elsewhere.
Mm.
That's cherished.
Mm.
Someone sees your essence.
Mm.
Now imagine when you cherish and see the essence of somebody, there's no more fear of missing out. It's okay to commit because you can't get that elsewhere. And when you're in that committed, you are cherishing and protecting because that essence is precious to you. Mm. This is the antidote to betrayal.
Mm. Delicious. Thank you, sir. Well, in that, let's just segue into the, I know you have something that will facilitate the listeners, please.
Okay, so in addition to the book, which is on Amazon, I have this free gift that I think would really benefit all of you. It's a video-based gift. It's called Dr. Gary's Guide for Lasting Love. And there's 3 versions of it. You get a right to create your own experience. You choose which one. Yeah, I love this right.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
And the first right is, the first path is if you're afraid to date and you want to get back in the dating game. The second path to lasting love is you're dating, but you're on that hamster wheel of the same person showing up over and over again. And then there's one for couples who are wondering, hey, how do we get back to the love we designed, right? And so you get to choose it. And if you go to GarySalyer.com, or you could go GarySalyer.com/love guide. It's on the front page of my website, but /love guide. You can go down there, give your email and choose, and then you'll also get weekly nourishing emails from me. And it's a beautiful, and it's the whole path of how you go from where you're at. And it's a really beautiful outline. I even had a couple tell me that were both in their 50s, twice divorced, that it saved their engagement. Mm. So it's beautiful, and it is a right to create your experience. I had a scholar say, in the original literature, this was called a right to autonomy. What gave you the right? And I said, a right to create my own experience.
That's beautiful. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is beautiful work. I'm not sure if is that mirror imaged and showing up wrong, or is that?
Oh, that's beautiful. Yes, that's right.
And so I will have we'll have a link to the access to the book on Amazon, but also to Gary's gift. Highly recommend you access that and tap into his work, into his world. So, Dr. Gary, I want to thank you for your time and sharing your wisdom with me and the audience today, and also for putting it into the book for the world to access, because, oh Lordy. Anyways, I was going to keep going, but I'm going to stop. So thank you all for tuning in to Tao Living Podcast. And until next time, abundant blessings. Ciao. Thank you for tuning in to the Tao Living Podcast, The Art of Living. Now go to loucorletto.com, LOUCORLETO.com, to receive your free training, the operator's manual for your vehicle. See, when you buy a phone, you get a manual. When you buy a car, you get a manual. When you entered your body, no manual. Let me teach you how it's really designed to work. Also, help me help others and share this podcast far and wide. And subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Until next time, abundant blessings.